Leadership is action-oriented. The leader has to be the spark. The leader has to be the change agent. The leader has to be the motivator and the inspirer. But above all, the leader has to be the example. Leaders solve problems. That's all I did for most of my adult life. I was a problem solver as a lieutenant. I was a problem solver as a general. I was a problem solver as Secretary of State.
You not only lead extremely well, but you've reflected on leadership, and you've come to some convictions about leadership, and then you've put them down in sort of axiomatic form. These Powell principles, these short sound bites that you've been a proponent of, these principles, for a long, long time. And I wonder if I could just ask you about several of them, kind of rapid fire,
Sure.
And then you explain them to us. Leaders should promote a clash of ideas.
The best leaders are those who allow lots of flowers to bloom and accept clashes of ideas. What's the point of having people work for you if you don't let them give you their best ideas? If they're just sitting around waiting to figure out what you want done, and then they do what you want done, rather than saying, General, no, you shouldn't do that, or General, here's a better idea. So I have always encouraged a leadership environment around me, either as Secretary of State or as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or as a battalion commander, where my subordinates and my followers and my subordinate leaders were able to argue with me directly about what we should do. And if I don't take advantage of their expertise, then why do I have them? And I don't want somebody who knows more about a subject but is reluctant to tell me about it because it might look like a clash with the boss. Clash with the boss. Argue with me. Argue with each other. But there will come a point when I've heard enough. I now know what I want to do, and I will tell you what the answer is. This is what we're going to do. From that point on, no more clash of ideas. The only idea that counts is mine. And at that point, what I expect all of my leaders to do and all of my followers to do is to execute my decision as if it was something they thought of, and to execute it with full passion for my idea. I generally can get that from people because they know that I have listened to their point of view. And they also know that I can't just take their point of view. I have a lot of other things I have to put into the equation.
Now, is this what you refer to as a noisy system?
Yes, a very noisy system.
And explain that a little bit.
I encourage, for example, as Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the #1 position in the Armed Forces of the United States, whenever I was working on an issue and I needed to have a meeting on it, I'd bring people into my office. I would not be wearing my blouse with all the medals and stars on it. I'd wear a woolly-pulley pullover sweater so that I sort of hid my position under rather nondescript clothing and put people at ease. I would never use a rectangular table. It would always be circular. And I would change where I would sit, so there was never a head to the table. And I would bring in young officers to sit with me, and I would argue with them. And they were initially, oh my gosh, the chairman's putting me on the spot. But the word got out quickly. General Powell really wants to hear what you think, even if you are only a captain and he is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And you know, he will argue with you. He will challenge you. And you'll feel a lot better when it's all over because he has listened to you. And I would create that kind of environment so that people knew that what General Powell wants is not just reinforcement of what he believes or what he thinks or what he wants. He wants what you know. He wants to pull out of you all of your knowledge and experience. I also found the effect was when they would go back to their offices, sweating, drenched, they would say to everybody else in the office, "Whew, yeah, I told him."
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah.
I told him.
One of my favorite of all yours, plans don't accomplish work, charts on walls don't accomplish work, only people get things done.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the origin of it.
Yeah, I'd love it.
I was at a promotion ceremony in the government. I was a White House fellow serving in the Office of Management and Budget, and I got invited to a promotion ceremony. And one of the individuals at the ceremony was a great man by the name of Admiral Hyman Rickover, the father of the nuclear navy.
Right.
And the individual was promoted. I don't even remember who it was now. And they asked Rickover to say a few words. And Rickover, who was getting old then, he said something along the lines, you know, plans are great, leaders are great, we all have to make sure we put out the right plans. But remember, all work is done by the followers, by the people. And so the leader has the great responsibility of putting the followers into the best environment to accomplish the work. And it isn't now, I would update that, say PowerPoint presentations are wonderful, and email is wonderful, and corporate meetings and off-sites and all the rest of that is wonderful, but it's the followers that get the work. There's a rule in the Army when you're doing a mission and you're preparing your battle plan. The commander gets 1/3 of the time. Take 1/3 of the time available to make your plan, but then give the other 2/3 to the rest of the organization so that subordinate commanders can prepare their plan and the troops can be prepared to accomplish the mission. But how many times have you seen in your life, in your experience, Bill, where a problem is being dealt with and all the leaders at the top take most of the time to plan and think and write papers and do PowerPoint presentations and to talk to each other, and then at the very last minute, a day or so before you want to get the thing done, you tell the followers about it, and then you wonder why it's all screwed up. 1/3, 2/3, pretty good rule to follow.
It was amazing to me how often in the material I read about you, you held up the value of come see me. If you have an issue, my door is open. I want to know.
Yeah, it was important for my staff to know that the door was always open for any issue, any problem, and not just on a scheduled basis, but whenever you needed to see me, if I'm here, come on in. It tends to make for a rather erratic office procedure, but that's the way I liked it. And I also had outsiders, not in my staff, but I had trusted agents outside the organization who were always watching what I was doing. And they had a direct phone line to me. And there was a phone that only I answered. And my friends knew that if I didn't pick it up in the third ring, it meant I wasn't there. And nobody else was going to pick it up. But I used this technique as a way of getting direct, honest, candid, the emperor has no clothes on insight from people who were close to me, who I trusted, but who were completely outside the organization. As a commander, it was my chaplain. It was my sergeant major. People who have a unique personal relationship to me. Sergeant major, chaplain, buddy in another unit. But they could get directly to me and say to me, look, here's what your staff is telling you. What a great guy you are. And you're the best we've ever seen. But here's what's really being said. Or here's where you really fouled up last week. And you need to sort this out. This isn't working for you. You think it's working because all the reports come up tell you it's working. But Colin, it ain't working.
Now this is along the principle of probe the organization.
Probe constantly.
Exactly.
As a brigade commander in the 101st Airborne Division, we had an old World War II barracks complex that my brigade was housed in. Those old 2-story wooden barracks. But every day when I was in garrison, I would walk through the brigade area. And I would generally follow the same route so that all the soldiers knew that I was going to be passing such and such a company or building generally about this time. And they knew that if they leapt out from behind the building and say, hey, Colonel Powell, how are you today? And then let down their hair, I would hear them. And so they could get something directly to me, not going through their battalion commander, their company commanders, and all the rest of them. And I encouraged them to do that. Now, my subordinate commanders were uneasy with this.
Yes.
Because they always were afraid that some fellow who was really a troublemaker was going to sell me a bill of goods. Well, I've been around a long time, and I know when I'm being sold a bill of goods. But this fellow got it off his chest, and then I could talk to the chain of command. And I told the commanders, don't worry about it. I'm going to come talk to you about anything a soldier brings to me. I'm not going to just accept it at face value. So don't find this to be threatening. Do not feel threatened because I have many ways of finding out what's going on. If you're doing your job, and if you're doing what I want you to do, you've got nothing to worry about. I would find out problems from some of these soldiers that my staff didn't have a clue about. They didn't know any of this was going on. And then I bring it in the chain of command. Do you know what Private Schmedlap said to me today over there in the 506th Infantry? That they can't get this, that, or the other. And what? We thought we had taken care of that. Well, we haven't. Yeah. So chain of command, solve it and let me know. But then to close the loop, I had to go back to Private Schmedlap. and say, son, thanks for bringing it to my attention. We didn't know about it. We solved it now.
Yeah,
Let me know if
exactly.
it isn't solved.
And it's fascinating because a lot of management schools teach these days don't ever violate the chain of command. I mean, when you have a direct report, you don't talk to their people unless that person is in the room with you. And I've violated that all my leadership life.
Well, in the military, you would think, because we are so hierarchical and it's matters of war and peace and life and death, that we wouldn't violate the chain of command. We're taught not to violate the chain of command. But it doesn't mean I can't find out information from any source anywhere.
Right.
And then get the information and bring it into the chain of command to resolve the problem.
Another one of your Powell principles is reward your best performers, get rid of non-performers. That sounds pretty tough.
One of the most difficult things any leader has to do is to look a human being in the face and knowing you're about to spoil his or her day, say, I'm sorry, you're not up to the standards, you're not up to the task that they've given to you. I want to retrain you, I want to move you to a different part of the organization, or it isn't going to work at all, you've got to go. Just as rewarding people and recognizing them and patting them on the back and saying thank you is a part of leadership. Part of leadership is also pruning an organization constantly and dealing with people who are not performing well. And here, Bill, is why it is so important, because when somebody is not pulling their load in an organization, a follower is not pulling his or her load, who's the first one who knows it? The good followers.
Yeah.
They're looking.
Yeah.
They know that they're working hard and so over there is not working hard.
Yeah.
Well, after a while, if nothing is done to correct the poor performer, what happens with the good performer?
Yeah.
They start to say, why am I killing myself?
Right.
The boss doesn't recognize what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so the leader who doesn't sense who are the poor performers and who doesn't do something about it is ultimately going to destroy the organization, because the good performers, the good followers, will say, why should I do that?
Be prepared to disappoint people. Be prepared to make people angry.
If you're going to be in charge, you have to be prepared to make some people unhappy. If you can't do that, you can't be a leader. And there will be days when you just can't take any more from somebody. You can't listen anymore. This is what we're going to do. And I'm overruling you, and I'm making you miserable. Now, that's just the way it is. I'm the leader and you're not, and I have the responsibility.
Do you think it's possible to be liked and to be effective in your role?
Yeah, because there's another one of my little rules that's a corollary to the one you just raised, and it's don't let your ego get so close to your position that when your position goes, your ego goes with it. What that means is, okay, we're arguing about something, and you're really arguing strongly about a position, and I decide against you. I'm going to do it a different way. You've just lost the position argument. But don't have your ego so caught up in it that you feel that you have been personally insulted because I didn't go with you. And so always keep some distance between your sort of emotional involvement in an issue and your professional involvement in an issue. I had an officer who worked for me, and he was a Marine, and he was aggressive, and he would fight with me all the time. He was about 2 grades below me. He was a major general, I was the chairman. And he would always come in and argue with me about something, and he was always trying to get me to do the right thing by giving me all the information. But he sometimes pushed it a bit too hard for my taste. And I would say, okay, I got it, Jack, now get out of here, and don't bother me with this anymore. And he'd march out, a little unhappy. But the next day, he'd be right back there, right back in battery, ready to go again. I need people who will tell me what they think, trust my judgment to incorporate what they think, and don't let their ego, don't let their personality get so close that when I spoil your day, when I really make you miserable, it doesn't destroy you. You know I still love you, and I want you back the next morning.
I was shocked when I read the Powell Principles, given your line of work most of your life, that one of them is, make sure that you have fun along the way. Yeah. I think, a lot of pastors don't feel like they can have hobbies. They got to be in production mode all the time.
And you have to have fun. I think I have a pretty good sense of humor. I like to kid with people, and I like to have fun. Now, my favorite hobby